So I liked it. Let's talk about why. Yeah, so I wasn't expecting to do something that is any analysis while also making a review about a movie, but even though I would say it's a review, it's also my first reaction, and this is legitimately the first time that I've ever gone to a theatrical release for an anime movie aside from any Ghibli film that I've ever seen. But this is, without a doubt, probably one of the better DanMachi medias that have ever been released ever. Which is so weird saying, because when I have sat here and read pretty much a majority of the DanMachi media, I have, read the light novels and whatnot. This is one of the very first times that I was legitimately surprised about the entirety of, it's something that is from the mind of Fujino Mori. Now, before I really get into this video and before I really get into anything else, I do want to let you guys know that there are going to be spoilers in this video, so please be beware. I do want you to understand that I will try to explain what I can in the first part while also finishing up and talking about the story and also some of my thoughts about the movie towards the end. I really hope that you guys enjoy a video like this. I might do it again for the reaction for the second season. This is just to test the waters. Alright, so first and foremost, with the theatrical release for DanMachi, it was actually technically back in February when this was theatrically released. It only just came to the US because Sentai has the licenses, they have the ability to sub it, they also did some very cool things towards the end of there, which is really, really interesting, so I am looking forward to what will be the dub release for this movie, but the sub release was really, really good as well. The main script was written by Fujino Mori, which is the writer for the DanMachi series. It's really interesting to hear that, mainly because a lot of the times when we think about anime movies and who is producing them and who is making them, sometimes a separate production team or a separate writer who really understands the media would end up writing that movie. But it's really interesting because when he submitted his first copy, it was taken with a lot of criticism and a lot of like from the producers. And from what I had seen towards the end, that there was actually changes from the first script because things ended up turning out the way that they did in the movie. I really did like this movie. I am a bit of a moviegoer, and I often find myself always sitting through, the average storylines of what you would find in a movie, and there was always this bit of a good result, but there's a twist at the end that I really, really do enjoy, which I'll explain more when I get to the story part of this. Now, I do want to talk about the outfits for this movie because these are probably my favorite outfits for DanMachi ever. As much as I am a bit of a fan of the original designs, but I'm just not a fan of Hestia's original design, and I'm not a fan of Lily's original design, but I am a huge fan of their designs in this movie. I'm a huge fan of Artemis's design in this movie, and also I just love all the unique outfits that they put in a lot of love and a lot of effort into this movie. And also there is one big thing, I would say, which is a slight problem, but not too much of a problem. The problem is that if you have to do a lot of 2D work in order to make things look smooth and look really, really nice in a movie, you end up losing a lot of that time and design aspect in order for its release. I do prefer some CG in animation. It's great for rotoscoping. It's great for being able to have a nice, clean, and simple design, so that way you don't have to put in an unbelievable amount of effort to make something look good. As the saying goes, work smarter, not harder. But that being besides the case, no matter what CG aspects were added into the movie, it does look like they did a lot of work in order to make it look like it was a part of the scene. But there are some obvious points: people's legs, some of the monsters. More specifically, one of the big parts of this monster in this movie is mostly CG, but with a lot of 2D added on top of it. So I've talked a lot about the forefront of my ideas of what was happening in this movie. Let's talk about the movie in and of itself, the story, and where it began and where it ends. I'm going to try and, condense what is a nearly 2-hour long movie into what will be about 5 minutes. So I'm going to hit some of the major points, some of the spoilery points, and then we're just going to go ahead and talk about my final thoughts on the movie. So first and foremost, this movie is about Belle and the crew about going into an adventure with Artemis, who is a proprietor over this very magical spear that is supposed to put an end to what is a monster that was sealed away tens of thousands of years ago. This was before the time the gods came down from the heavens, so that's the reason why it's so important. So him being sealed away and him breaking out recently is a huge problem. So of course, Belle being Belle, you know, someone that is raised by Zeus and somebody that is kind of the main character in the story, he ends up pulling out a magical spear that is embedded in a rock, and Hermes is a bit of a proprietor of all of this. Seeing as he is often seen as the man pulling the strings, he's sweet but smarmy in a lot of this movie, and you will see why you love Hermes, but why you also kind of hate Hermes for doing the things that he does. And then we meet Artemis, and there's a lot of backstory of Artemis, as everyone knows that Artemis is, you know, very pure and a virgin goddess, the goddess of the moon, the goddess of the hunt, and which is super interesting considering the fact that this spear is supposed to represent Orion. And Orion is the word of hunter, and when it is picked up by Belle, she refers to Belle as Orion and not as Belle, simply just because it is the representation of the spear. They all get outfitted, they ended up flying what is like this 10-day trip out to what is the outskirts of the country. And they find themselves in a thick of forest and a ruins where this monster had been sealed away about 10,000 years ago, which I think, once again, really interesting aspect because it tells that there was a story before the gods. So at this point, by the time they ended up making it to the ruins, they meet up with the Hermes Familia and Osphie getting angry at Hermes for leaving her behind. Then there was this whole 18th floor scenario where they ended up trying to spy on the girls while they were out bathing in the springs and failed miserably, while also adding into all of that. But Belle ends up trying to sneak off and he ends up running into Artemis, which in case you guys don't know the story of Artemis, that there was once a man that had accidentally ran into Artemis and the nymphs that she was bathing with and turned him into a stag. She talks about if there was ever the chance that if she was who she really was, she would have just shot him dead. Which is really funny because like that is that story, the mythology of that. Anyways, these two end up having a conversation about what the gods are like and why is it that Belle looks up to them the way they do. I think that's relatively interesting, and they ended up having this, you know, very well animated dance, and then, you know, the next morning ends up happening. During all of this, by the way, Hestia is kind of mad at Artemis because Artemis seems to have changed a lot. She has found out something specifically about Artemis that is very bad, which will lead into this next part. So by the time everyone ends up getting into the ruins and they end up facing off this monster, the big reveal is that Artemis's physical body has been absorbed by the monster. And now that the monster has Artemis's physical body and all the power of a god, it is now bending reality and using its power or her power in order to do some pretty fucked up shit. In this time though, Belle can't comprehend the idea of killing a person or killing a god or defeating this monster, because if he ends up doing it, he ends up breaking a promise, and he doesn't want to do that. He ends up having a mental breakdown. This is such an interesting aspect and such an interesting concept, and I really do love this. Now, this is the part where I believe that the final words of Fujinori Mori kind of split off from what happened in the rest of the production, because a lot of people would assume the ending would be what it would be. You know, they end up saving Artemis and all this and that, and everyone's happy, and you know, that's the way it is. Fortunately, this is not that story. This all happens, and he ends up putting the knife into Artemis in order to prevent any more bad stuff happening. There is this small moment between the two of them where she ends up talking about how there's the life cycle and how they might meet again in 1,000, 100, or 10,000. Really sweet. But it is sad to know that there won't be an Artemis in the future just yet. apparently. Who knows? That bittersweet ending where it shows, you know, when you saved Artemis, pretty much the land was being destroyed and now it's being saved. Everything looks green. The life is not being sucked out of it. And there is just this huge moment between Belle and Hestia, where Belle says, "I want to be stronger." And that's where the movie ends, which is perfect, especially for a series like this, because we constantly have this idea, these anime characters that are so overpowered and they're so strong, but we end up finally pulling something away, even though he's able to do this with the help of things. He himself is not strong enough to save Artemis. He himself is not strong enough to kill the monster. There's a few other aspects that I'm not going to be able to get into because I don't want this video getting too long, but that gives you the idea of what is going on. At the end of the movie, there was about an extra 10-15 minutes. This was with an interview with the director and the producer and a lot of the people that were behind it. We got a bit of a studio tour. We also got a small snippet from none other than Sentai Filmwork. This with the ADR director, which is amazing, and also many of the voice actors, which also includes Bryson Bogus, which I'm super happy about, as well as the voice actor that will be playing Artemis for the movie, which once again, I'm going to admit, I'm super excited to see what this movie is going to be like when it is dubbed. And I do like both the sub and the dub for this series. It gives you the idea that I am looking forward to seeing this movie again as a dubbed version of it than it is for its sub. So what are my final thoughts? You know, like I said, this is an anime movie. This is a movie that you're gonna go end up seeing, and it is a part of a greater story. And this is also with an ending that you weren't going to expect. And also this allows us to kind of get an idea that there are greater machinations to this universe than we would have initially thought. I prefer the bittersweet ending of this movie rather than, you know, he ends up saving the girl and everyone's happy. And I'm really glad that they gave a level of character development to Belle, which is the character that we are following and showing how much emotion and how much he gives a damn about the people that he works with and the people that he cares about. So yeah, that's my final thoughts. Those are my final thoughts on this movie. I'm really hoping that you guys would have enjoyed what my thoughts are about this. My thoughts on movies like this. I've heard a lot of, you know, people having their version of complaints about this movie. I don't really give a damn. I thought it was really, really good. I saw the really good parts about this movie. I understand that there are some bad parts, but those are very minute compared to a lot of other things. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you all in the next video. Yeah. Laters.